So if you are going through life wanting love, wanting to express love, and seeing that although there might be good moments, very good moments, it's incomplete, then know that in heaven, love has reached its completion in the wedding feast of the Lamb.
As Father Roni would say, this is me, this is you, this is us.
Yeah.
Father Roni, welcome to another episode of Feeding Fathers.
Thank you.
How was the last one? How was your experience?
Good.
Tell us.
So far, good.
You know, I've been wondering all week what your favorite German food is.
Really?
Yeah. Kimchi.
So what is it?
I don't know.
It was a sensitive topic.
No.
It was a very
What are
sensitive
German
topic. He got
foods?
mad at me.
What
Like,
are
I don't
German
know,
foods?
like sauerkraut. Of course, you know, they have like
Isn't it
sausages. Sauerkraut, yeah.
What is sauerkraut?
It's like vegetable, like
Vegetables?
cabbage, hadach.
Mm.
Schnitzel, Leberkäse, you know.
We have to have these translated with subtitles.
and many other stuff.
Yeah,
Nice.
that's good. You enjoyed it last time?
Yeah.
Yeah. He didn't say much. Why are you laughing?
I like the way he speaks, Yanima.
Father Roni?
Yes, I
Me
do.
too, Habibi.
Oh, you do have.
Good. How was your guys' week?
Very good.
Good. I haven't been here in a while.
It's only when you're scheduled.
Huh?
Why don't you just come here even when you're not scheduled?
You know, it was really funny. Speaking of where we are, I think St. John's was open for 5 years, and I had not stepped foot in the church.
Oh,
That's right.
That was a good bit that I had going
Yeah.
on for a long time. And then one time we were here for a men's group, and then I was forced to go in because of night prayer. Yeah. So the first time I went into St. John's was because of night prayer, not for mass or something.
We had the same thing with English Mass, right? Because we would always serve Chaldean Mass.
English mass, the first one I went to, I was 26 years old. Yeah.
Wow.
Good times.
My first one was when you guys got ordained. I went to your first Sunday Mass. Wait, that was your first Mass, right?
First mass where?
St. Peter's.
Yeah, my St. Peter's. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was your first English mass.
My first English Mass.
Oh, my first mass was Chaldean, Reservoir.
Then it wasn't your Mass. It was
Then it was
probably
Father
Father
Simon's.
Simon's.
Yeah, he did the Saturday mass. Yeah, because we got ordained Friday, Ruted Modiane, and then he did the Saturday vigil mass, and then the 10 a.m. Was it 9:30 at the time? I think it was still
9:30,
9:30.
yeah.
English mass, and then I did the Reservoir.
What did Father Simon tell you? He probably said, look, man, I don't mind. I mean, if you don't want to do it, I could do it, you know?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
pretty much that. Yeah,
That
or
seems
I think he
bad.
actually claimed it. He just said, "I'm going to do that mass." I said, "Okay, fine, whatever."
Always getting the short end of the stick, man.
Yeah. What did you guys preach on Sunday? We talked about the gospel reading, I think, last week. So, what did you preach on this last Sunday?
Honestly, I forgot. What did I preach on?
So much for that gospel reading.
What do you... No, I'm being honest.
How can you forget the word of God?
I'm not forgetting the word of God. I'm forgetting my words.
Oh, well, when you put it that way,
So you don't preach the word of God?
you impose your own
No,
words.
eisegesis. What is this attack, dude? I'm the pseudo moderator of this show right now. Okay,
Oh.
please have some respect.
Okay.
Let's start with Father Roni. Wait, let me read it. Wait, 1 second.
What did I
Not
preach?
your hearts be troubled. Believe.
Yes.
I preached on the phrase that Jesus uses to respond to Philip's request to see the Father. He says, "Have you been with me so long, and yet you do not know me, Philip?"
Philip.
And that just kind of stands out as a heavy thing to say.
Mhm.
And then I talked about how that is a question to ask ourselves in the context of any friendship or relationship when we've spent some time around somebody, when there's familiarity but not intimacy, and how that could result in someone getting hurt or realizing that this is not a true friendship. When there's familiarity again, but no intimacy. And so that's not enough with Jesus. It's not enough with each other. To just know about Jesus, you have to also understand what's the purpose of his mission, what's the substance of his mission. And you see it in the way he responds to Philip when he uses his name in the form of a nickname and not in the form of his full Greek name. He's coming down to his level. That's I think the essence of Jesus' mission, coming down to our level, not just to do that, but also to raise us up. And so the key word for understanding that, I think, is compassion, co-passion, like feeling with somebody, suffering with somebody. And that's how you show love. That's how you really, I think, ground a friendship. And so that's what I talked about.
I remembered mine, actually,
Yeah.
if you guys still care.
Please.
So in the book club I'm in right now, we started reading a series on C.S. Lewis, and he mentions how forgiveness is a great idea until you have something to forgive or someone to forgive. So my premise of my homily was a lot of things could be very ideal. Love, everyone says, yeah, you should love, you should show, like you were saying, compassion, you should be forgiving. It's all nice and dandy and great until you have to love someone that hurt you, until you have to forgive someone that betrayed you. And I base that off of faith. So then I started to take the route of, okay, Christ says, believe in God, believe also in me. And the effect of that is for our hearts not to be troubled. So faith cannot just remain some sort of abstract understanding. It has to be something that is done, something that's active. And the only way to do that is to point ourselves towards the Father's house and these many rooms, which is heaven.
Nice, man.
Thank you so
I like
much.
that.
Thank you.
That's very cool.
And if I may ask, what did you preach about this week?
I preached about the virtue of faith and its opposite. So I essentially stuck to the line, let not your hearts be troubled, believe in God, believe also in me. So I wanted to use some examples, good and bad, from the Old Testament, because my argument was that believing in God or trusting in God and Christ is the substance, it's the essence of the Christian life, and I think that's true. And the good example of that, and he's a paradigmatic example of the Old Testament, is Abraham, who trusted God in the unknown, not trusted God when he knew, right? So God called Abraham out of his hometown and said, go to a place which I will tell you. So he was calling him out, but Abraham didn't know where he was calling him out to. And Abraham followed. And so it's trusting in God in the unknown. And I think that's what Jesus was imparting to the disciples, because this is, John 14 is at the Last Supper, and Jesus is about to be arrested and suffer and die and all this. So they were going to be all, confused and everything. They were gonna feel lost and feel like deprived and all this stuff. And Jesus is preparing them for that, for this moment that they're going to experience of the unknown, what's going to happen now when Jesus dies. And so he's basically telling them, trust me, don't worry about it. Okay. And I brought up some bad examples of this, like people that started off well and then ended up badly, like Saul. I mean, I'm doing the Bible in the Ear thing, and I'm rereading some of the stuff from the Old Testament. Saul starts off well, he's humble and everything like this, and he's going to Samuel and he's offering sacrifices to the Lord and all this stuff. But then he ends up really badly because he stops trusting in God's power and begins to trust in his own, because he gets nervous, he gets anxious. He's got this battle with the Philistines, he doesn't know how it's going to go, he consults a medium, he wants to control it. So yeah, and then Solomon, kind of the same thing. My whole thing was, Jesus is saying the essence of Christian life is trust in God, and we're always having a hard time with that because we're trying to find security in this life. And we're at a point in society where we have a lot to feel secure in, because we live in abundance. We have a lot of stuff. We have a lot of money. We have a lot of things. We have a lot of, big houses. We have everything, more so than human history has ever had. And so we really can feel like we're secure in this life. And yet Jesus is telling us, believe not in your stuff, in your things, but in me. So everybody's going to be going to that place of confusion and feeling lost no matter what. You know, even if not in our entire lives here, we're going to end up dying. So that death always reminds us we're not really secure. We have to actually just trust in God.
Question for you. Do you think Jesus leaving the disciples off with having faith in the unknown, having faith in him in the unknown, has to do with throughout his ministry, he mentioned a lot of things to them. He was prophesying to them, the Son of Man will be delivered, among many other things. Do you think that's a result of their ability to not understand or grasp what he was saying? Because he didn't always leave it in the unknown, but it was just them, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting actually, because he does tell them the Son of Man is going to Jerusalem.
Yeah.
He'll be arrested and judged, and then he will die. And on the third day, he'll be crucified. And on the third day, he will rise from the dead. And then that's when St. Peter says, God forbid, Lord.
Yeah.
It's like, why God forbid? He's just talked about, you know, he's going to rise from the dead. I think they had no idea what he was talking about. When
That's kind of scary, like
Yeah.
for us, because they had no idea, and they're like physically still with him, you know? Even when Judas went to go betray Christ, he said, no, you know, he's going to feed the poor. Where did Judas go? You know?
Yeah.
But even at that last second, they didn't understand. It's unbelievable.
Mm-hmm. But then there's indications that, you know, obviously they, you know, the actual event of the resurrection filled in the gaps of their minds, so that they thought about it for years afterwards before they wrote it down, and then went back and remembered what Jesus said and understood it, you know, in retrospect. So St. John says, you know, he quotes Jesus saying, destroy this temple and in 3 days I will raise it up. And then John says he was speaking of the temple of his body, which when he was risen from the dead, his disciples remembered his saying, right?
Yeah.
So that had to have been an interesting, let's say, progression for the disciples themselves. So like hear
To
everything
say
that
the
Jesus
least,
is saying,
yeah.
to see the things that he's doing, to hear him preach, to have, you know, and they're very obscure about what's going on and what he's saying. And then everything, you know, happens in time for them. And then they begin to fill in the gaps as they go out through life, you know. And I think there's an analogy that's true for us too, to some extent.
Yeah. What about your preaching?
No, but so I was just, you know, I think I said like something like, you know, motivation, like in everything you need motivation to do something, whatever it is, but this has to be a motivation. And I said like, you know, basically in Christian faith, the best motivation is heaven, the way it is presented by us, by Jesus to us, you know. So going to God, going to my Father, and you know, I am in the Father, and the Father is in me, and there are many rooms. It's just like beautiful image, and this can motivate us, you know, to practice, you know, our faith and to believe in God day after day more and more, because it's just beautiful thing, and no other religion has such a like clear picture and beautiful picture of you know, life after death.
So, a question for you.
But you have to remember always this stuff that sometimes, because we can forget this stuff like easily, so we need to remember.
Yeah, Habibi, man. Question for you. A lot of people have a hard time having that motivation for heaven because they don't know they don't know how to understand it. For example, like when we say heaven, what do we mean? We're just going to be, you know, in adoration all day. Well, when I'm in adoration now, I get bored. Am I going to be around the saints? What do I, you know, what is it like? Like, how do they get this motivation? You know what I mean? Because it could sound like right now, a lot of us have a tough time sitting in the presence of Christ in the Eucharist. It's true.
Yeah.
You know, but what could give someone an incentive to, like you said, be pointed towards heaven? What is that thing? Obviously, we know it's outside of time and space. You're in the presence of God, but because we're faced with this question, I'm sure at, you know, youth groups, and I've been asked this question a lot.
Yeah, I mean, like everything else, you know, having in mind that something is big, something you cannot imagine, it's kind of like complicated. It's always better and good in compared to something that is easy and simple and just have it in front of you and you can see it and you can touch it and you can smell it. You can so complicated stuff is not always like should not be a problem always, or something like that's just like a huge thing, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like what I mean by that?
Yeah,
Sure.
but we say the Eucharist is a foretaste of heaven. And that's something we could see and taste.
I don't know where I was looking on social media, and I think I saw a clip of Father Andy preaching.
I'm
now
sorry
that
to
he was
hear
in
that.
Michigan,
So sorry to hear that.
he was preaching at, I think, a First Communion Mass or something, and then he gave this image to the kids, which I think is good for anyone to understand and consider. You guys mentioned motivation for heaven, or the Eucharist as a foretaste of heaven. He gave the image of like smelling your mom's cooking. You smell it throughout the whole house if your mom is a good cook, and it makes you want to go eat. It makes you excited about going to eat the food. And so the Eucharist is like that for us as a foretaste to heaven. It's like a smell of our Father's,
Love,
cooking, I guess, or
compassion.
his love and compassion. So that leads me to like what I guess I think about as a motivation for heaven. I think all of us want love in life and the kind of life that we experience. But I think no matter where we go or who we're surrounded by or what we pursue in our life, it's incomplete. The love that we experience is incomplete. There are moments where it does give us a fulfilling experience when someone loves us, when someone lays down their life in some kind of way for us, or when we do that for others as well. There's also always some kind of fulfillment there. But I think because we are fallen and because we miss the mark often in the things that we do, the love that we experience and show to others is ultimately incomplete on earth. Where we see its fullest expression as people of faith is in the Eucharist, which is the foretaste of heaven. And if that's the case, if things add up, then in heaven, love has reached its completion. And whatever that is, it's going to be our soul finally satisfied in its experiencing God face to face.
Yeah.
So if you are going through life wanting love, wanting to express love, and seeing that although there might be good moments, very good moments, it's incomplete, then know that in heaven, love has reached its completion in the wedding feast of the Lamb.
Yeah, I think by way of experience, like we get a foretaste. I mean, it's kind of like what you're saying with Father Andy's homily.
Mm-hmm.
We do have types. Like types is a real thing. We get a foretaste of heaven here. We also get foretastes of hell here, by the way, in this life. But one of them is like, for example, I think when you're in prayer and you're really, and it's few and far between, I think, at least in my experience, where you really feel like you're in union with God, and you forget about yourself and you're very
Present.
just elated by God's presence and God's love and God's mercy, and you're just kind of overcome by that. That happens sometimes, I think, with everybody, and it's not ordinary in this life because we're not in heaven now, but it becomes ordinary in the next life and infinitely greater even. Or even more like mundane examples, I think, are types of heaven. When you're with your family or with your best friend or your group of friends or whatever, and you're having like a good time just hanging out and you're laughing together and you're just kind of like caught up in the moment, and you forget about yourself in the sense that you forget about not just your problems, but you forget about your ego particularly.
Yeah.
You forget about your own pride. You're totally taken into this moment right now with these other people, and you're elated, And I think heaven is like that elation, so much so that you forget about your own self. You don't lose yourself, but you forget about yourself. You're not concerned with yourself. Your mind and your attention and your heart is taken over by the joy of the moment and the presence of God and the presence of the people that you love. That's heaven. Hell is the opposite, and it has its own type, which is in this life, like isolation utter loneliness, when you just get so
Numbness,
deep into
yeah.
yourself. Yeah, you're so concerned about your own personal good and your own personal satisfaction with life that you don't think about anybody, nor God, nor anything else. You're only concerned with yourself, and you end up essentially eating yourself up because you're absolutely alone. Hell is like that, but way worse, obviously.
For me, I want to expound on this and pose you guys with a question. For me, it's a very fact that I know heaven exists. And that's kind of enough. Because again, there's a foretaste that we could have here on earth, but we're limited to what extent we could, have that foretaste. But the very fact that I know heaven exists, that means that when I am betrayed here, I will no longer be betrayed in heaven, right? When I'm hurt here, that hurt will go away. If there's a lack of love, there will be an infinite amount of love, and so on and so forth. So basically, looking at the trials and tribulations that we're faced with as a very temporary thing, because sometimes we convince ourselves that, when is this ever going to end? How is this always me? Why me? Throwing this pity party. But we know this from the revelation of Christ that this is temporary. And just like we read in last Sunday's gospel, in my Father's house there are many rooms. And the question I wanted to pose you guys with is, so Jesus is saying, in my Father's house there are many rooms that are being prepared for you. And in Matthew 7, he says, enter by the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way is easy that leads to destruction. And those who enter it are many. For the gate is narrow and the way is hard that leads to life, and those who find it are few. How do you guys reconcile what we're talking about with that, if it needs reconciliation?
I don't use that passage. I don't know how to interpret that passage, in a quantitative way. So I don't take that passage and say like, oh, most people are going to hell and a few people are going to heaven. I really have no idea. I mean, Jesus could mean something else by that. I don't know. It's not my business, kind of thing. I think at least what he's saying there is there are a few people that seek true life. And maybe that's true, It might seem to be the case. But why? Because true life, understood from the Christian perspective, is seeking to be a child in God. Okay? And what's the biggest obstacle to that childlike lifestyle? Not lifestyle, but childlike understanding of self. Childlike understanding of self. It's the ego and pride, right? And so, it seems like in the world, most often people try to inflate their egos and show off and boast of themselves and get themselves into a position where people will clap for them and praise them and whatever, recognize them and all these kinds of things. And they're taken into that kind of mentality where they need to keep feeding this egotistical problem. But that's taking us further away from a childlike experience of life, because a child, again, going back to this experience of heaven, right? In heaven, we kind of forget about ourselves without losing ourselves. We forget about ourselves, and we are enamored by the love of God.
Like Jesus says, unless you turn and become like this child.
And so Jesus says that. Why? Because a child doesn't have this ego problem. He's got an advantage in that he hasn't like fully developed an awareness of self. Not totally,
Self-seeking. None of that, yeah.
But he loves his parents. He just wants to please his parents and his siblings, presumably, and maybe his friends if he's got any, if he's that old or whatever, But he's all about other people still, and he just wants to have a good time with people, and he wants to please people, and he wants to do these kinds of things. Most children, I think, are like that. But because he hasn't developed this hyper awareness of self, that he hasn't developed an ego that comes with that, So when we grow up, it's very easy, and I think common, and maybe the reason why Jesus says what he says there, easy and common to try to feed the ego, but that's not real life. Real life is
it's not all
becoming a son or a daughter of God. When St. Paul, actually, it was also the epistle reading this last week, I think. We've been given the spirit of sonship,
Crying Abba, Father.
crying Abba, Father. I could be mixing it with the daily mass. I'm not sure, but we've been given the spirit of sonship to call out to God, Abba, Father. Right? That's life. Life in the Christian sense is being a child of God and living in the house of the Lord, dwelling in the house of the Lord, and seeing God face to face, and experiencing the elation and the joy of being in God's presence and forgetting about the self and being very focused on God and on others, the communion of saints in heaven. Which is why, again, on earth, our type of that is prayer. It's being with each other in church. Is being with each other in joy, right? That kind of thing. Living in community with one another and experiencing God together as a church.
And it's much easier to be egotistical than to see yourself as a child of God. It really is, just like any other vice.
Mm-hmm.
It's much easier to fall into sin than fight the temptation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe that's why Jesus is illustrating this as the narrow door, because it's very difficult to do good.
It's funny though. It takes a lot more work. Sorry, I know you want to say something, but it takes a lot more work to feed your ego. Like you have to work really, really hard.
Yeah. And you have to chase after it.
You have to work really
Fill
hard.
in
You
the
have
gaps.
to manipulate.
Yeah.
You have to to politic. You have to do all
You're
kinds
moving.
of stuff.
You're moving.
Yeah, you have to do all that
Everything's
stuff.
moving.
It takes so much mental energy, and it's just it always ends up failing. Humility is a lot easier. It's truly a lot easier, and it's a lot more satisfying. Being a child is much easier and much more satisfying. It's not to say that we're going to be irresponsible. You still have to be responsible. You have to do your duties. You have to exercise your talents that God has given to you. You have to do all that stuff. But if you do it in a humble manner, it's just much easier to do. You know that God is going to take care of things, and just don't worry.
It's like lying too. It's much harder,
right? Exactly,
because you got to start backing that up, making sure that lie is.
You have to work very hard to be a liar.
Yeah.
You have to work very, very hard to be a liar.
Or else when you tell the truth, you just say it and that's it.
Yeah.
There's nothing you gotta fill in and fix and make sure this person doesn't know this other thing. And
I think that's why some people look forward to retirement, because you go back to that state of leisure, and
100%.
Much of the noise of life is turned down as you go back to that life of leisure. Yeah. To kind of add to your point that you're making, first of all, I think that, you're not supposed to really look at things quantitatively in the way that Jesus is expressing these parables and images. And in addition to that, he goes on in that passage in Matthew 7. The point is not to look at things quantitatively, but to look at relationships, to look at quality, to look at, did I spend my life seeking to become a child of God? Or did I spend my life seeking to create my own universe and follow my own kinds of priorities and make my own kinds of definitions? Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. So basically, he who allows himself to be adopted by my Father. Then the answer is, on that day, many will say to me, we prophesied in your name, we cast out demons in your name, we did many mighty works in your name. What's the answer? Then I will declare to them, I never knew you.
Mm-hmm.
So you can do these things even aside from seeking after your own priorities. You can even make some of the work of the kingdom part of your priorities, and you can bring that into your own agenda. But there's the part of knowing Jesus, which is different than just doing things. Knowing Jesus, again, means being at the level he wants us to be, and he comes down to meet us there. He comes down to show us what service is, what humility is, what love is. Knowing his heart, making our heart like his, that's the point. That's the true life I think you're talking about.
It's not just checking off boxes kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I really love how he answers that. You did all this, but I still don't know you. It's the same thing like he was saying to Philip. After all these years, you still don't know me. That's just a crazy thing to say.
When he says, show us the Father, and we shall be saved.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that up, because that's really important, because we get caught up in I was talking about this in my catechism class last week, actually last couple of weeks. But the Protestants used to blame Catholics for having a work-based religion, and the Protestants kind of went the opposite way, where they said we're saved by faith alone. Catholicism never was a work-based religion, but I think some Catholics are. I mean, to be honest with you, I think some Catholics do boil the whole faith down to what am I doing, right? So, am I performing the law of God? Am I effective? Am I doing a lot of stuff? Am I working really hard? Am I doing all these things, whatever? And you can be doing all that stuff and still not know Jesus Christ. That's the problem,
This is very relatable to the priesthood, by the way.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely very relatable to the priesthood, because a priest can very easily do a whole bunch of stuff, all kinds of youth groups, all kinds of events, and do 3 masses a day and hear hundreds of confessions or whatever, and still not himself know Jesus Christ. It's very easy to do that. It's very easy to reduce the priesthood or the Christian life in general to just duty, But the thing about that is God doesn't need us to do anything. He actually doesn't need us to do anything. I found this in the Gospel of Mark. It's only in the Gospel of Mark where Jesus calls, the calling of the 12 in the Gospel of Mark. It says, are you going to find it?
I'm going to look at some notes I took on that.
Okay. It says Jesus called, I'm going to misquote it here.
Why don't we just quote it validly right
Let's
now?
just quote it validly.
Father Roni, why don't you say something while I'm looking for this?
Do you remember which chapter it's in?
Yeah, I found it. And passing along by the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon and Andrew, the brother of Simon, casting in nets in the sea, for they were fishermen. And Jesus said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you become fishers of men." And immediately they left their nets and followed him. And going on a little farther, he saw James the son of Zebedee and John his brother, who were in their boat mending the nets. And immediately he called them, and they left their father Zebedee in the boats with the hired servants and followed him.
Okay, I'm going to read this part.
I just read it.
I'm sorry. No.
Why did you let me go on
Are you in chapter 3?
Yeah, it's chapter 3. Are you in chapter 3?
Just put your phone down.
Read.
I'm going to read it.
Read. Okay. Last time I'm
this
ever
is the part that I want to talk about.
Sounds
okay?
good.
Now, you're not in my head to know that, so I don't blame you. Don't worry.
Perfect.
Okay?
That's great.
Chapter of Mark 3, verse 13.
I knew it.
Yeah. And he went up on the mountain. He went up on the mountain and called to him those whom he desired, and they came to him. And he appointed 12 to be with him and to be sent out to preach. And that is really, really, really an important particularity. He appointed 12, and I think this is ordered correctly, intentionally. He appointed 12 to be with him and to be sent out to preach, but first to be with him and then to be sent out. Okay? So it's very easy and tempting, I think, to take the mission before the relationship. And I think that happens often. And that's going back to what you were when you read that passage about Jesus saying, "I never knew you." It's like, yeah, they went on the mission. They did the mission. They did what they were supposed to do, essentially. Mm-hmm. But you never got the first part, the more important part.
Yeah.
Can I read you something from, I think you said it's your favorite saint, Bernard of Clairvaux?
Yes.
Okay. He says this in his commentary on the Song of Songs.
Just make sure it's the right one before you read it for 5 minutes.
I know.
Okay, perfect.
I know. The man who is wise, therefore, will see his life as more like a reservoir than a canal. The canal simultaneously pours out what it receives. The reservoir contains the water until it is filled, then discharges the flow without loss to itself. He knows that a curse is on the man who allows his own property to degenerate. Today there are many in the church who act like canals. The reservoirs are far too rare. So urgent is the charity of those through whom the streams of heavenly doctrine flow to us, that they want to pour it forth before they have been filled. They are more ready to speak than to listen, impatient to teach what they have not grasped, and full of presumption to govern others while they have not known how to govern themselves.
It's beautiful.
So when I was doing a Bible study on that, that's one quote that I read to kind of provide more background to this model of being with him and then being sent out to preach.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that imagery a lot. A reservoir delivers without any loss to itself because it's been set up properly. But a canal, it's receiving something, and without harboring the water, efficiently or correctly,
Can't function.
Just discharges it because of urgency or because of some other motive.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of cool.
It's very cool.
Because it is about becoming true follower of Christ, rather than just as you just saying about getting things done or doing this and doing that. But we have to become as a whole, as a follower of Christ, as a to be truly an image of Christ. And this is not by just doing things, but allowing from basically from inside of us to be transformed, our soul to be transformed, our heart to be transformed, our thoughts to be strengthened and purified by God, and so on and so on. That's more than just doing a project, something like that.
And sometimes it's like we're doing him a favor.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like if we're praying morning prayer, evening prayer, sitting in the chapel, reading the Bible. Honestly, sometimes it feels like we're doing God the favor, but you gotta snap out of that mentality, right? And know that this is right and just to do. This is what he is owed. And again, that's a bare minimum of what we can give him. Because sometimes when it feels burdensome, it's like, okay, let's pause really quick. Are we really doing God a favor right now?
Yeah. Yeah, but when we start to see it from this relationship perspective,
Father,
like we're
son,
supposed to be a reservoir.
Yeah.
Which just means we're giving, like, what is the priest supposed to give to people?
Yeah.
I mean, he's not, I'll speak only for myself. I have nothing to give to anybody. Nothing special to give to anybody.
Come on, man.
Yeah.
Man,
No, he's right. He's right.
Thank you very much, Danny, the first guy. Oh, Father Danny, sorry. But really, I have nothing.
I'm on your side.
I have nothing. I have no talent that's special
Correct.
or particular or anything that I need to give, that anybody needs me to give to them. Nothing.
Right.
What I can give to them as a priest is simply my relationship with Christ. Okay, and that is what I'm for. And that's not just true of the priest, but that's true of all of Christians. When Jesus says, so the whole church and every member of the church, not just the priesthood. When Jesus says, "I am the light of the world," no one, if you want to walk in the light, you have to walk by me, right? Otherwise, you will walk. Whoever does not believe in me walks in darkness, etc. But then at the end of the Beatitudes, he says to the crowd, to all the people, "You are the light of the world," right? So how does that make any sense except that the light of the world is Christ, and all the members of his body, Christians, all Christians, right, are lights with him, but their light comes from the only one light, which is Christ. So they have to have the light, and their whole mission, the whole church's mission in the world is just to give it Jesus Christ and enlighten the world. That's it. It's not to build great projects and great buildings, and and all that stuff is important. All that stuff is very important, but the most important thing is just to give Jesus Christ.
It needs nourishing.
Yeah.
Especially when Jesus illustrates it for us, when he calls himself the vine and we are the branches.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Anyone that knows the bare minimum about gardening, you really have to take care of the branches so they don't get too heavy and fall over. So they're taken care of, so they're trimmed. And that's what causes it to bear fruits. It won't be the vine's problem that those branches are not, bearing any fruits or growing. We're an extension of him, but we also have to take care of that branch. God, Christ will continue to give us life as he is the vine, but we have to do our end too. And the way to do that is to first connect what is giving me life, and then we could work on the branches. Mm-hmm. The thing that is giving me life is Christ.
The source, yeah.
You know what doesn't help? Being in a social media age,
Yeah.
because it's not a contemplative age where you can receive everything that God has to reveal and meditate on it, or allow it to really kind of baptize your thoughts and your outlook on life. Not that this is impossible, because people are doing it in a faithful way, I'm sure, but it just makes it very difficult in an age where everything has to be quick and convenient.
Yeah. Is that a shot at Father Simon?
Yes.
Short answer, yes.
No, I'm just kidding.
I know. I get what you
Yeah.
mean, and I totally agree, by the way.
Now, Father Simon, I know he's one of those people that definitely makes time for like holy hours and stuff like that, which is very necessary in the kind of time that we live in, where everything is, again, fast-paced, convenient, and that's what's expected now because of trends and patterns and what everyone's gotten used to.
Well, attention span too, right?
Yeah. If Jesus is telling me a parable and there's some moving parts to it and the images are not clear off the top of my head, then I'm not going to give it the time that it needs to be understood.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm just influenced by the way that society's moving right now, which kind of is tragic because that's the main way that Jesus teaches, is through parables.
And you have a personable kind of thing when you're dispensing the word of God to others. You know, it's a very real way when you're in front of someone.
Yeah.
I don't know. As Father Roni would say, this is me, this is you, this is us.
Yeah.
Don't be nervous, man.
No, I'm not nervous. I'm just like, I'm thinking of what you have been saying. You know, it's just nice to reflect upon, the big things, and everything that I can, take and reflect upon is what you've been saying. And it's great, yeah.
Why were we only pointing at him?
No, you too, Father
no,
Chris.
No, he pointed at you.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I know, I just wanted you to emphasize.
I don't know if you guys have anything else to talk about, but one of the things that this conversation makes me think about is something I read in Christ, the Ideal of the Priest.
I love it. Yeah.
Who's that by? Columba Marmion?
That's and
Yeah.
he also wrote Ideal Monk. That's one that I know better.
Oh, okay.
Obviously. But
Okay.
yeah, Abbot Columba
Blessed Columba Marmion. He was an abbot.
yeah.
Yeah.
Benedictine, right?
Yeah.
That's
So he wrote like, how is a priest who's busy at a parish that's very busy supposed to contemplate on a Eucharist he just received at Mass when he has like a meeting right after, or some kind of duties to attend to right after, which happens often, obviously. How is he supposed to take that opportunity and sit down with the gift of God that he has just received?
Mm-hmm.
So he answers it, I think, in a nice way, and he says, let his meeting show forth the love he received in the Eucharist right now. Let the youth group that he goes to carry the Eucharist into it.
Mm-hmm.
So like, it's not as if to say, okay, society's busy and it's moving at a fast pace and there's information overload, and because of that, it's impossible like to sit and be contemplative. Your actions can show that you've taken the gift you've received seriously and you want to let it transform you. Your actions can show that too. So contemplation is not reserved, I think, just for like the private sphere or your own individual time, which that can definitely be the case and should be. But it's also meant to be carried out too, I think. And the way he answered that was actually something I was thinking about for a long time. Like when I was in seminary and like seeing priests perform all their busy work and stuff like that. How is there enough time for contemplation? But it's not necessarily reserved for just sitting in a room by yourself.
But the opposite is true too. If you don't, then you're not going to fool anyone, and it could have the full opposite effect.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if you treat the Eucharist like it's just a thing to do, like, or the Mass, I just have to I'm on schedule to do Mass at 6 p.m. and I'm going to do that for a half an hour, and then I have this next thing I have to do. If it's just another one of those things that you have to do, then it's just as secular and mundane and dutiful as whatever, an appointment that you have with your doctor or something like that. But it has to be the climax. It has to be the heart of everything, and that from which everything else flows and makes sense. So the meeting that you have afterwards, like that's nicely said. The meeting that you have afterwards should come from the Mass, and the goodness of the meeting should be that it's flowing out of the Mass, out of the reception of the Eucharist. Yeah. That's why there's a missionary aspect to the Eucharist. It is presence of Christ, but also being sent out on mission. Like you receive Christ to be present with him and in union with him, but then that's supposed to be handed over to other people.
Yeah.
It's never the case that you're supposed to live a purely contemplative life. It's just you and Jesus. Like that doesn't make sense. But it's never the case either that you're supposed to live a purely active life either, where you're just working all the time. It should be that one flows out of the other. And I think that passage from Mark, he appointed 12 to be with him and to go out and preach.
Yeah. And that's a theme in Mark too. Like you'll see it over and over with different people that are interacting with Jesus.
Yeah.
The fact that there's this phrase being with him.
Yeah.
It's crucial for Mark. And then like the missionary aspect that you're talking about with the Eucharist, you see it in the Mass. It's in the structure of the Mass. The shortest part of Mass is communion. Because you receive it. Obviously, there's time to pray and express thanksgiving for that. But that's the shortest part of the Mass, because now go be the communion, go be the Eucharist.
Yep.
Do this in remembrance of me.
Is there any like a form of a prayer by us after Mass? The last word that the priest says to the people?
Pasha.
No, there's no command to the
Blessed
people.
Sunday, have a Blessed Sunday. What?
No, there's no like command to the people or instruction or anything.
Pusha b'shlama.
We actually, there's a prayer to say that to the altar.
For
Yeah,
the priest,
priest
for the
privately.
priest, but not the people.
Yeah, not the people.
Or you just do one of these.
Oh, and
Yeah.
like the feast days,
Yeah.
Merry Christmas,
Merry Christmas.
Happy Easter, whatever. Yeah.
But a regular Sunday is just,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
You guys ready for some food?
Yeah.
Today we're having food from Crave. We thank Cal for the food. Crave is a good Mediterranean restaurant that's in Rancho San Diego, a local place right next to Dairy Queen. So thank you, Cal.
Thank you, Carl.
The gyros are good.
Gyros.
Yeah.
What about you, Father Nikito? How did it taste on your sleeve?
Yeah. Did a rookie move.
Yeah. Moments
Yeah.
ago,
Did my
Moments
sleeve
ago.
in the hummus right there.
Yeah.
Father Enkidu made a mess of himself.
By the way, these sleeves will never do that.
You would think he would have learned by now.
How long have you been a monk for?
But
A whole decade.
it's just like all of us with our sins. You'd think we'd have learned by now.
That's a really good analogy, man.
Yeah. But we keep dipping our sleeves into the hummus.
Keep dipping our sleeves into the hummus.
Yeah.
It's the hummus's fault.
Father Roni, could I ask you a question? You could say no, by the way. Don't feel obliged.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to try again. What is your favorite food in Germany?
Yeah, you didn't give an answer.
But like honestly though.
Please.
Yeah. I mean, in Germany, I had, Chaldean food, I had
Here we
Turkish
go.
food,
Here
I
we
had
go.
Indian food, I had
We're
Chinese
looking
food.
for one
Oi,
answer.
Bobby.
Maybe schnitzel was good to go.
Not maybe.
Not
just,
maybe.
It's just
Pick one with conviction. With
one.
conviction.
One.
Say it with
Okay.
your chest, as the kids say.
Hey, bro.
I'm done.
Guys,
I'm
this
done.
is crazy. This food, like that.
Just like that, huh?
Like that.
Um,
Like you have to try the, something like that.
German sausage.
Okay, there we
Okay.
Maybe good ones. Like you have to know which one you
No,
are
there we go.
eating.
There we go. You're doing so good, bro. Okay. Do you still have family in Germany?
Yeah. You know that.
Yeah, but it's a
The
conversation.
people that are watching don't know that, have you been?
I know that. Here, take
I was
it.
just joking, huh?
It's okay, man.
I do have my parents, my family, my siblings living there.
You have nieces and nephews, right?
Do they watch this?
I think so.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, they do.
Shout them out, man.
Damalo.
Which ones are the gyro ones?
Right there.
Hi, Baba.
I want to cry right now.
Does your dad watch this show?
Maybe.
Do they teach English in German schools?
Yeah.
Yeah, they must, right?
Yeah. I depends. I mean, different schools.
Do they teach other European languages or just English?
Yeah. Spanish, French.
Spanish?
Yeah, you can choose Latin.
Mm.
You have people in Algosh?
Wow. Come here.
You know what?
Come here.
We deserve it, bro.
Come here. We deserve
Yeah,
it.
we deserve it.
Thank you. Yes, I do have some relatives living in Alqush. Yeah. Hi, guys.
Guys, so I was just in Iraq, like a couple of weeks ago.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah. Welcome back.
Yeah.
Thank
Welcome
you,
back.
thank you. It was a beautiful trip. But at one point, we were walking in the streets of Telkip,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a guy showing us like where certain families used to live.
Mm-hmm.
And we're walking through some alleys, and all of a sudden he's like, "Let me ask you something. Do you know Father Simon?"
Oh, nice.
And I said,
No way.
"Yeah, of course, I know Father Simon." He goes, "Really?" Like, I couldn't believe it. And then he
So
said,
funny.
he goes, "Have you seen that one TikTok he has where?" And he started describing one of his TikTok videos. I don't have TikTok, so I've never seen it, but I was like, "There's a guy right now walking me through a random street in a village of northern Iraq asking about Father Simon."
Did you know him?
And that's how my trip got ruined.
That's so funny.
Nice.
He is Sufyan's brother.
Oh, okay.
No.
Nice. Father Roni, could you tell us could you just say a sentence in German?
Say the creed in German.
Oh no.
Hell.
Too much.
Okay.
I won't be able to.
Say glory be to the Father, to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, world without end. Amen.
Well, I haven't prayed in German for a long time.
Okay, just say.
Bro, this is all a hoax. He
Just-
doesn't know.
Yeah.
Just say.
Are you
Just
even
say,
from Germany?
just say, guys, this was a nice talk that we had today.
Ja, das war eine schöne Diskussion. Und ich danke euch, dass ich dabei war. Danke euch allen.
Dankeschön. That means thank you, right?
Mhm.
Kann kein Deutsch.
Okay.
Great.
This is good food, by the way.
Well, yeah.
Really
thank
good
you guys very much. A big treat. Thank you.
Mama, der.
Yeah, why'd you put a
You
bunch of
just-
food perfectly stacked on your
Guys.
plate?
Guys,
Is this to go?
my Invisalign, man.
What?
I can't have it all for too
Wait, you didn't
long.
eat right now?
Huh?
No, hold on. Did you not eat right now?
Guys,
Wait.
bro. I was doing
Wow.
so good until you pointed that out.
This
Anyone
guy.
want a napkin? Here. See? I'm gonna hold it to you, and this is how you.
I break Lent for you, bro.
Oh, come on.
Okay, let's end this episode.
Why?
I'm tired.